Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I'm Gina Ford, Communications Director for Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. You good, Dale? Okay. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us. As you know, the county has reached a settlement in regards to litigation that has spanned over about 2.5 years. Today, the county executive is here to discuss, followed by Chief Malik Aziz. Afterwards, we will be taking questions. Just a point to note, we will only be taking questions regarding this particular settlement. We will not be going into great detail regarding the individual claims. So stand by for that. County Executive.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. As you know, earlier this week, we settled the Henlea lawsuit. And before I begin, I really do owe a huge thank you to our county attorney, Rhonda Weaver. Certainly want to thank her and the Office of Law for the tremendous work that they did during this case. I also want to thank our Chief Administrative Officer, who is present and who will be on hand to answer some questions today, Tara Jackson. And I have to tell you, Tara Jackson has been just phenomenal. She became our Chief Administrative Officer in December. She was elevated to that position and has worked so diligently to bring this matter to a close. And so I do want to just give a special point of thank you to her. I am also happy to be joined today by the President of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Josephine Morning, also President of the NAACP, Linda Thomas. I also want to thank Pastor Tony Lee of the Community of Hope AME Church. Pastor James Robinson of Tree of Life Ministries is with us. We also have Calvin Duvall of the Citizens Complaint Oversight Panel. Delegate Wanika Fisher is here. Yamilet Gutierrez and Professor Chris Marsh are all here, and they were a critical part of our police reform work group. And I wanted to say thank you so much to each of them for joining us. As county executive, I had an obligation to ensure that this lawsuit was settled in a manner that was fair, both to Prince George's County and to the plaintiffs, and I believe that we have accomplished just that. As many of you know, I am a daughter of Prince George's County, and I have grown up here my entire life. I'm a lifelong Prince Georgian, and so I know well the history of the Prince George's County Police Department. I have also been here to see its evolution. The vast majority of the men and women who serve in our police department are good officers who go to work every single day with one goal in mind. And that goal is to keep Prince Georgians safe. And like any organization, there are those who have absolutely no business being there. And Prince George's Police Department is no different. Moving forward, I will continue to do the work needed to ensure that our culture and policies do not support bad actors or bad behavior. And we will also make sure that everyone in this government knows that discrimination and bias are not acceptable in our police department or any other agency. We will continue to work to put a system in place that rewards good officers, but also holds officers accountable without regard for race, gender, or personal relationships. When their actions do not meet the expectations of this government or our community, they will be handled accordingly. When this lawsuit was filed, less than 2 weeks after I took office, regarding matters that everyone agrees predated this administration, I promised that we would dig deeply into the Prince George's County Police Department. I promised as well that we would examine it from every angle. And based on what I saw, I would be unafraid to make changes and address issues. The settlement that just occurred, which is set to take place and take effect on July 25th, 2021, is only a part of those changes. The reforms we see today are a culmination of work that began when we decided in December of 2019 to fully fund our body-worn camera program. The reform continued with the death of William Green when I insisted that Corporal Owen be immediately charged with murder for his egregious act and settled that matter expeditiously. It continued with the listening session that I held with the Prince George's County Police Department command staff in May of 2020, without top brass present to understand and to hear their concerns firsthand. The reform continued after the death of George Floyd when I said that we will have missed the opportunity to create real change if we didn't move in the moment. I then, soon after that, created the Police Reform Work Group and gave them the task of taking a deep dive into the policies and procedures of our department. During that time, we interviewed more than 50 stakeholders in Prince George's to hear their views and experiences with the Prince George's County Police Department. It continued as we began to implement the police reform recommendations, conducted a national search, and brought in a reform-minded police chief. It continued last January when the police department's general orders were updated to increase the punishment for officers who engaged in conduct that promoted racial or other related biases, making it a fireable offense. And those reforms continue today as we implement the terms of this settlement. The department you see, I submit to you, is not the department of a year and a half ago. This settlement allows us to continue the path that we are already on of reforming this department. While there were things that we certainly disagreed on, to include some of the individual claims that were made, we agreed that overall our department needed meaningful and lasting change. That's why, through this settlement, we've agreed to make further changes in the areas of promotions, discipline, and overall enhancement to our policies and training to ensure that we have a department free of discrimination and free of retaliation. To be clear, this lawsuit has been costly to everyone involved. And in all honesty, it's been a distraction. I couldn't control the challenges that were presented by the unexpected global pandemic that occupied the last 18 months of my first term in office. But what I can assure you is this, that the internal culture that was the subject of this lawsuit, which took decades to create, is one that will end with this administration. Our efforts will be ongoing, and we will continue to work as we have through every challenge to identify solutions that allow our county to move forward and to ensure that greatness grows here for generations to come. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite to the podium Chief Malik Aziz.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank the county executive, the CAO, and the Office of Law for their hard work in pushing this forward. Today is the day that we can start moving forward for healing, for progressing our police department and our county. The police force here, the police service as I call it, in Prince George's County, the men and women who go out each and every day to serve us, to serve the citizens, they are in great numbers. And this police service that they provide is one of nobility. And so when we look back, we look at the things that have brought us here today, and we would make note that the great majority continue to serve you well. And that's each and every day. But we must address the other issues, and we have. So for me to come in here at this time, in this day, in Prince George's County, in a challenging time, it enables me to move forward. It enables me to provide the leadership that is necessary to enjoin our police service, our police force, our members, into providing you that noble service. These major issues that came out of the lawsuit enacted us to put in several policies, and one of EEO, where you have demanded that we provide a equal and equitable work environment. The bias-free policy, where one would expect that the police department would be one that did not demonstrate bias, nor did we tolerate it. And a discipline matrix that would up the discipline for more harsher penalties for things that would be unacceptable for those of us who endear in humanity and join in humanity together. So I look forward inside of the reorganization of a department to bring us forth into 21st century policing. And 21st century policing must be more than the pillars that we see. It must be in our hearts. It must be in our minds. It must be in everything that we have going forth in Prince George's County Police Department. And that would mean our building a trust and establishing legitimacy for the citizens that we serve, for enjoining our community for policy and oversight would definitely mean that our community engagement, our police community relations would take center stage, that we must make room for a more robust community policing effort, that we must take on the responsibility for providing officer wellness and safety. It must mean more than words. We must meet it with action. And we must provide stable training and education, not just for the police force, but for the community in which we serve. When we spoke about the issues that got us here, from things such as the EEO, that would mean that we're going to put in place a policy that trains our personnel. We'll have a better personnel division, more certified certifications and qualifications, that they would be able to serve our police officers who bring forth complaints in a rightful and meaningful way. That our internal affairs division would have everyone there trained in EEO and conflict resolution and mediation, but specialized detectives to handle these type of situations. And when all else, can not be met by an officer who may deem it necessary not to go forth inside internally in our system, that we provide an outlet for them to move outside into another EEO realm. For our bias-free policy, we're looking for that bias-free treatment of all individuals. And that just doesn't mean in the police service. It means in special circumstances where we can look internally and see that just doesn't mean discipline. It also means counseling. It means training. It means education. It means all of the other things that we would have to negate our implicit biases. It would mean everything for fair and impartial policing, for a real effort for procedural justice. And our discipline matrix would just, for no other terms that we would have, we would not cooperate or tolerate with racism or discrimination or any other type of form that would seek to disenfranchise any one of our police officers or police members of our department for any basic human right or employee right. And so we look at these other things since I've been here. So we started on the road at the direction of our county executive, and the direction that we would go is to look at things that we needed to mend, and some things that were broken. And so we put forth a secondary employment policy, one that I think the citizens have also demanded, one that would seek to separate duties, that would provide accountability and responsibility, one that would address some of the systemic problems that occurred that brought forth the need to revamp our policy. And we did that, and we're issuing that policy very soon. Our body-worn camera policy, to enable us to be transparent, because you've called on us for that same accountability. And so we looked at who would have rights to delete, who could audit, when an officer could deactivate, or when an officer could, activate his body-worn camera. And so we put those, we either sharpened the policy, or we put forth new words so that they could have a better action, not just for the citizens, but for the officers involved, who the great majority believe in that type of system. But the most important aspect of the body-worn camera policy was that we had no policy about releasing the body-worn camera captured video. And so we put forth this policy now that will enable us to have a set of policies and procedures that we could release video to the public on noble or notable issues that came forth that the public would have a right to see. And we work with all groups, some for our first time where we joined in focus groups and our collective bargaining, the CBA partners with the FOP, with our command and regular officers for input to move forward in just the type of way a policy would be created. And even some people here from the community today put their eyes on a policy to provide that pillar that I mentioned about community oversight for policy. So we're headed in the right direction. And I'm honored to be standing here today knowing that we can move forward with a professional police department, one police department that you have demanded, one that you desire, and one that you deserve. And I think this day puts us on a course and a path to be a better police department, to better serve our citizens of this great county, and to better serve the police officers here who love this profession and have put everything into it and want to see a better police department. And I think they have enjoined me with those words and actions since I've been here. So again, I think that we're on the right path, and I'm looking forward to more things to come into 21st century policing for the Prince George's County Police Department. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Chief. So with that, we will take some questions. Again, I remind you specifically about this settlement. We are not discussing individual claims. Will.
Thank you. Generally speaking, if some residents, obviously not all, who believe this settlement should have been either settled sooner or not at all, based on the information that came public. Could you summarize, because you kind of touched on it before, but summarize for those residents who may understand why it took this long?
Yeah, so the culture that was the subject of this lawsuit took decades to create. And what that meant for us is that it took time for us also to examine the claims in the lawsuit, to do the investigation that was necessary. In other words, we had to do it right. And that's important to understand, is that the reforms that we're talking about, the period of reformation that we're in, required that we would not be rushed into a result that was not fair to the plaintiffs in this case, that would not be fair to the county in this case, but that it was necessary that we do this right. I was determined that we were going to do this the right way, and it meant that we needed to take the time that was necessary to do it properly. And again, this should have been done decades ago, truthfully speaking. We should not have been here. I don't think anybody denies that there's no way we should have been here. But we are here, and as I have said before, the department that we inherited at this point, when I came into office, this suit was less than 2 weeks after I got here. But we are pleased today to say that this has been a period of reformation. This department is different than the one we were in even a year ago. And so we're very proud that we have actually been able to make substantive changes that we believe will make the department better and stronger, will help us to better serve our residents, and will be a better place for our officers to work as well.
How do you want the residents to see this settlement? Should they look at this, the officers were right? Or how should they look at it? How do you want them, how should they interpret it?
So this settlement represents moving forward. What it says is that as a result of the time that we have spent to come here, we have found a place that we believe is fair for both the plaintiffs in the case and fair to Prince George's County. But we have been able to, I think, sufficient to everybody involved, been able to address the concerns that were the subject of the lawsuit, and we're able now to move forward and to continue to do the important work that we realize is the most important work that we're going to do right now. We have heard from our residents that police reform is an especially important issue for Prince George's County. And it's not done. We still have work to do, but we believe this is a significant step in the right direction and that we can move forward and continue to build the department that we desire.
Brett.
Money was spent to fight this lawsuit. The Ranger report was commissioned to rebut the claim of the plaintiffs. What changed after such a fight?
Well, because we believe that we reached a point where it was fair to the plaintiffs and fair to Prince George's County, that we could come to an agreement and that we could move forward. And again, we did not want to be rushed into moving forward until we felt that we had reached that point, and we believe that we have. Yes.
Can I ask, can you speak a little bit to the money that was spent on the suit? I think there have been residents who have said that lots of that money maybe could have gone to other things that the county needed, that residents needed to fund police reform. By my math, it's about $24 million is going to lawyers, and about 2. Can you speak a little bit to that monetary investment?
I don't think anybody's wrong to say that this is not the way that any of us wanted to spend taxpayer dollars. And again, it was a costly lawsuit. It was costly for the plaintiffs. It was costly also for the county. And again, this is, in my estimation, something that should have been done decades ago. But again, the culture that was the subject of this lawsuit took decades to create. And we spent the time over the last year and a half, 2 years, to address the concerns in a way that we believe makes the department different than the one that we encountered and gets closer to what the public wants. And so if anybody says, are we happy at having spent taxpayer dollars this way? Absolutely not. But we were determined to do it right and to make sure that when this was done, we would not have to go backwards. We can go forward. This is what the public has been asking for years. They've been asking us for this. And we believe we've accomplished exactly what the people have asked us to do, which is to look at the department, to make changes where we felt it was necessary, and to deliver to this public and to the officers who put their lives on the line and put their careers on the line, a department that they deserve.
Why use a private law firm? Why not use the county attorney in this?
We didn't have the resources that were necessary to resolve this in the way that we felt would be fair to the county. And again, the plaintiffs in this case hired a blue chip private law firm, and we needed to have resources that would be necessary to make sure that the result was a fair result for the county, for Prince George's County.
Are you concerned about a chilling effect for whistleblowers?
No. I believe the case was resolved in a way that was fair to everybody involved. So no.
So what is your message to other county employees who have concerns about discrimination or workplace environment?
We don't condone discrimination, bias, or any other illegal act, not only in the police department, but in any agency in this government. And if it is happening, we will address it. And we've addressed it in this case. So no, I'm not concerned at all about whistleblowers again, what I've said before is that I don't condone it in any agency. We want it to be rooted out wherever it exists. If it's police, it doesn't matter what the agency is. We want this government to be free of discrimination and bias. And I think this is a substantial step toward making sure that that's true.
Question about you talked about the reforms that you were already making, and you talked about how you will not tolerate it. Did this lawsuit move things forward? Was it necessary? Or were these things, did this lawsuit contribute to this process?
I think there were many things that contributed to the process of moving us forward. And again, the lawsuit, remember, was filed less than 2 weeks after I came into office. And so it's hard to say that it didn't that it didn't contribute to the reforms, but there are reforms that happened throughout this process, even as the lawsuit was happening. Again, with the police reform task force that I formed last summer, there were substantial suggestions and recommendations that were made that we have already started implementing. And so it was a culmination. So they worked together, both what we have achieved as a result of the lawsuit, as well as the work that was already being done with the body-worn cameras and some of the other policy changes that have been made in the department.
Just a question for you. Are you concerned about any of the other officers who remain in the department? In this lawsuit, there were a number of people who are still working in the Prince George's County Police Department. Do you feel like there needs to be oversight, that you need to take a closer look at any of these folks? What are your thoughts?
No, I think that what we have put in place already will seek to mitigate any of those things. I think the county executive, I'll echo what she just said. We don't have a space for cooperation or tolerate. We have no intention to tolerate those kinds of actions. So I don't think at this point in time, in the realm of fairness, in the realm of what we just said about equity, that I would be looking to do anything further than what we did. Putting a policy in place is the first step to addressing those issues. And I'm confident that as we move forward in reorganization and restructuring of our police department, that we will seek to mitigate any of those kinds of things that have went on. I think the settlement of the lawsuit has spoke volumes already, and I wouldn't want to add anything to muddle that. Everyone starts on a new leveled playing field where everyone gets a chance to be right again and whole again. And so if any issue arises out of that, then we have already policies and procedures in place, except under this administration, we will vigorously address it under this administration.
Anything alleged in the lawsuit that gives you pause, that gives you great concern, that you want to address?
Well, any lawsuit would give me great concern. So I don't think I would go out and name something specifically. What I want to do is address the issues that we already put forth, and that is the policies of the EEO, that we have a new discipline matrix forthcoming, and what people would already expect from their police department, that we have every intention to be a bias-free police department. We have every intention to not tolerate discrimination or racism or any other things that would be against the decent humanity of all police officers and citizens.
Chief, quick question, sir. Please kind of touch on what I asked. Just wanted to make sure I heard something about the body-worn camera policy. Was there something not implemented beforehand? I just want.
Well, what we did not have, it was not addressed, was some of the basic things that we looked at. And myself and the DCAO, Mr. Barry Stanton, we looked at some things in regards to who had rights to delete video, because that was an issue that came up with our citizens. So we wanted to make it clear about who had deletion rights so we could be accountable. And then we wanted to make sure that we were properly auditing our body-worn cameras. You get a piece of hardware and you put it into use, and no one ever looks at it again. So we implemented methods of audits so that we could hold ourselves accountable before the citizens would hold us accountable. And then there was not a specified process for how we would release body-worn camera video. In this climate, it has become more of a demand. So some of our equipment had to meet the technology, demands of today. So we put those three major things in it, but we gave a robust, vigorous read of it and put together a policy that we think would serve our police officers and our citizens, and we would enjoin to have proper oversight with that. So that's what it was.
Last question.
Chief, just a quick follow-up. You mentioned about this is turning a new page. Do you see this also boosting officers' morale and hopefully bringing more in?
Well, I think officers are relieved and that this is settled. And that's always a morale booster when you can put something behind you and look forward to a new day. So I don't think, that a lawsuit was inhibiting us from recruiting or retention. But I do believe that officers who look at things and see what's happening in the public and what's happening internally, because just like citizens who have the right to, and they deserve a police department that is progressive, that meets these reform type of ideas today, that in this period of reformation, again, and more cyclical, going back, 200 years, here we are today, officers just want to move forward. And they want to know that they have the proper leadership, they have the proper guidance, they have the backing, that they understand what is in front of them. And I think it enables them to serve our citizens more robustly. And more so than that, when people see that, a better officer whose morale is up, is a better ambassador for bringing people to this noble police profession. So anything that is positive is beneficial to us.
You know, I just want to, Will, I know you did ask a question earlier, and it just came to mind to give you an example. You were saying, you were talking about the time frame that was involved and kind of what the message was. And it is that when there was an issue in controversy, we took more time to make sure that we got it right. And I'll give you as an example the William Green case, which in our mind was uncontroverted. That was a case where the path seemed clearer. There were no issues in controversy, and without even a lawsuit, we settled that case immediately. And in this case, where we believed that the county's liability was less clear, we had to take the time that was necessary to examine the issues, to do the investigation, and to make sure that the result was a fair result for both the county and for the plaintiffs.
So can you think about it? Can you speak to the changes that have been made? The chief stepping down and with McCall leaving, how do you feel that that's moving?
I think leadership is important, and I think that Chief Aziz presents the kind of leadership that we need at this moment in this department, in this county. I think Chief Aziz is 30 years of experience in law enforcement, combined with his reputation for community policing, strong community policing, and just an understanding of 21st century policing is exactly what the department needs. We also have interim DCAO Barry Stanton, who is here. I want to thank him for his leadership as well. But we believe that we are moving in the right direction and that a leadership change was necessary. We've made the changes as I promised. I've said it from the very beginning. Whenever I saw whatever the issues were, I would address them. And that's exactly what we've done. We needed a change in leadership. We made it. We needed to implement certain reforms. We're making them. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. But I think, again, it is very important for me to communicate to the public that the department that we leave, that this administration leaves, will be better than the one that we encountered. It is our earnest desire to make sure we do the very best we can, not only for them, but for the officers who work in this department. And we believe that we're making substantial steps toward that. And I want to thank also all of these partners who are on the stage today, from the faith community, from the, again, the NAACP, SCLC, everybody from the state legislature. I want to thank everyone. This has truly been, I want to thank the men and women of our department. It has really been an effort that we're all undertaking together, but we are headed in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.